Welcome to SF Commercial Property Conversations with Bruce Bean, where Bay Area investments meet expert insights. Get ready to unlock the strategies of commercial real estate success.
Today we have Stephen Moye with us, and Stephen grew up in Southern California. Stephen, it's great to have you on. It'd be fun to hear your history of going from Julian, California into mortgage brokerage.
Well, I didn't really have anything to do with Julian except that my family discovered a gold mine there 150 years. So now in San Diego, or if you've been there like two generations, you're considered a native. But I actually go back my family goes back pretty far in Julian, and I'm allowed every 4 years to be in their Fourth of July parade and actually do that. So that's kind of a nice thing. But most of my I've lived more in La Mesa, which is more which is about 30 miles west of Julian, suburb town, best known for Bill Walton and Reggie Bush, and hopefully because of this podcast, me.
All right. So you grew up in La Mesa. You actually went to the San Diego State University there and graduated in history. Is that correct?
I'm actually a few credits short of a social science degree because I got into the mortgage business, and even though I've used the social science degree, I've used a ton of that in my business. I am still 9 credits short of getting my degree.
Well, and just close enough. You didn't need to get it done, it sounds like you. How long have you been in the mortgage business now?
Since '96. So, 28 years.
28 years. And did I hear that you did some teaching before that time period?
No, I was studying. The plan was, so I got into the mortgage business so I paid my way through college. Primarily, I was in a band with, and we weren't like we were a working band 4 nights a week, sometimes 5, and I ended up getting the keyboardist in the band got into through his fraternity brothers, got into the mortgage business, and then he ended up opening a company, and then the bass player from our band ended up getting into the mortgage business. Now they were up in Orange County, but the bass player wanted to open a branch office in San Diego to be closer to his son. So when I found out how much they were making, and I was working at a grocery store, studying to be a high school history teacher, I thought, well, I could do that, and it seemed like a fun thing. So I started. Got into the I got licensed and got into the business. And my first full year, I actually was the number 2 or 3 guy in the company. And the joke was that I went from Ralph's to Rich's because I was, that was the name of the grocery store I worked at. But I actually kind of knew I'd be good because one of the things working at a grocery store that I really clicked on was that I knew my clients because when we would get leads, I was able to empathize with them because I understood those people because they had been going through my checkout line for 13 years.
Wow.
Because mortgage finance is the liberal arts. Mortgage lending is the liberal arts of finance because everything is about storytelling and the narrative. And I realized this because when I first started working, I was working next to a lot of MBAs, and I have, there's nothing, any kind of knowledge is great, but when you're selling mortgages, sometimes if you're too number driven, it can almost alienate people because when people buy a house, they're not thinking about, they care about the payment, but what they care about is, what's this neighborhood going to be like? Where am I going to? Is this the park I'm going to take my kids to? What are the schools like? And those are very that's more about a narrative than a financial decision. Even though the mortgage, getting a mortgage kind of straddles both things. You're living in your investment.
Right. So it's all about storytelling, but I'm sort of curious in that typically the sales agent on the particular sale of a resident would be taking care of that particular story or negative narrative. But
But if you're an MBA, a lot of times you're just driven about, oh, look at these numbers.
right, right,
And
right.
now you have to explain that, but you have to explain it not in a, you have to explain it in detail that, so that somebody feels at peace with these complicated things. Up to anybody's point in their life, that house that they're buying now is going to be the biggest financial investment that they make. So it's important that you're able to, take terms like APR, because I remember, you look at the old truth in lending form, and you see that that you're paying 3.5 times your principal balance over the life of the loan. You need to be able to explain that, not in not in sophisticated college boy terms, but in ways that are going to, be understood and not fearful to a first time home buyer.
So
Now,
give me an
sometimes you,
can you give me an example of a story you might tell someone in terms of that particular
well,
situation?
well, the thing though is yeah, I mean, not the story implies that it's fictional, and none of the, we don't ever want to deal with fiction because that happened in 2008 and put the whole world
Yeah,
into
okay.
this like economy that we're still kind of trying to fight. But the thing though is so the thing is that you have to explain how amortization works. You have to explain is that, I mean, in worst cases, yes, you're paying, 3.5 times, including your principal balance, but you could also, glass half full, you're also writing off, that much interest as well over the life of the loan. And, the best hedge against inflation is having a fixed rate mortgage because you're locking down the payment of your biggest typical monthly expense. And so you have to put, and we still have to do this. We have to put the the benefits, and we also have to deal with the potential negatives. Like sometimes with I've had to you know explain to clients that even if you do buy a house, I had this young couple that I've known for a long time, and they really love travel, and they love like the 6 week travel where they just save up all their vacation time and take 6 weeks, and they post it all on the internet, and it's wonderful. Well, if you're buying a house, you may not have that type of luxury. Sometimes, invariably, when you make a big decision like that, you have to discuss what the trade offs are. And sometimes that's the narrative we have to discuss when people are on the fence about whether something makes sense. So rather than story, I guess the narrative control, defining the narrative is kind of the more accurate way, because we don't want to be dealing with falsehoods. And I'll be honest, a lot of times not everyone is ready to buy a house. Not everyone should buy a house. There is a reason that you have to qualify. You have to, but part of it is you know being real with people and explaining those things so that they understand the the actual benefits from it. And the system totally favors home ownership for the most part over non-home ownership, just because if they say that if you didn't have the tax deduction, home prices would be a lot lower. I mean, that's so you have this tax advantage that's keeping that's keeping home prices a little bit higher than they might be without it. And so there's a lot of things to consider, and it's important that we're that were truthful about it, but also realistic with their bars. Because sometimes, someone called me today, they're not going to qualify, and I just had to say, this isn't 2000. There isn't this situation where you can call 10,000 people, and if someone hears your story, you're going to get 100% financing, a steak dinner, a car wash on with your 500 credit score, and not have to verify a job. Like,
Not
but
going to happen.
hope is a wonderful thing, except that nobody should hope for that type of housing market, because
Well, so I think what I hear you saying is that rather than being an MBA that strictly says, okay, here's your numbers, here's what it's going to look like, here's the best deal I can get you on a 30-year fixed mortgage, yada yada yada. You're saying, okay, here's the numbers, but here's how all the benefits work with that
right.
particular number.
And here's what the sacrifices are going to be. Like, sometimes people will. You have to equate it in terms like sometimes people will look at a rate and they'll be, they'll want it to be lower, and I understand that, but sometimes, like, we have to, but sometimes if the payment is, $40 a month higher than what I want to pay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's break that down into, instead of, going to Starbucks every day, maybe you make coffee at home and you use Starbucks on the weekends as a treat. There's your $40.
Right.
Instead, maybe you pack your lunch, maybe you pack your lunch when you're going to work. Like, I've had those conversations with people, because it's important that people, that there can be sacrifice. If this is something that you want, it can be more attainable if you break it down into little things. Okay, so we don't do fast food every night. We have to do meal prep. And sometimes we have to make, changes if you want to do it. If you don't want to buy the house, or if having fast food every day is more important, those are choices that people make all the time, whether they make it intentionally. I mean, I don't know anyone that says, I fast food or the house, I choose. But people make those choices every day, whether they know it or not, and just in terms of how they, the choices, and that's fine. No judgment.
Well, I think what you're saying is that oftentimes somebody will qualify for a loan, but it's stretching them, and so they have to kind of make some sacrifices in order to kind of keep the whole thing put together.
And I don't think sacrifices are a bad thing. I think sacrifice doesn't get enough credit, because sometimes, like, you know there was this, I remember seeing this Chinese acrobats type stuff, and of course they came out and said, we're going to try this trick, and it was some, really really crazy trick, but this has never been done, and of course they screwed it up the first time, and then they
Yeah,
tried it
right,
a second
right,
time,
right.
and then the third time they get it, but the applause is great.
Yeah.
And equating back to mortgages, the idea that, you kind of sometimes remember, more fondly, the things that you kind of worked for. Like, the thing is, so, like, New American Funding, the company I work for, puts a big degree on reviews. They really want to we're the best reviewed mortgage company in the country, just in terms of most reviewed and best reviewed. And the thing is that, on a scale of 1 to 5, I score, with over like 300 plus reviews, I scored, I'm about 4.8, which is
Yeah.
good. Now,
Yeah.
there's a couple reviews there, and I don't encourage anyone to look, but there's a couple reviews there that are not me at my best. Now, there's a couple where, um, you know, there's a couple there where I can see where the customer was what their complaints were. I learned from it. There's also a couple there that are completely screwed up, and
Yeah.
they're completely wrong. But we don't get the chance to go and do that. But you learn from it better. But what they found in their stuff is that people actually give you more credit for the reviews if there are a couple, they look at the consistency of reviews, they look at the number of reviews, but also if it was all perfect, nobody believes it. So it actually builds more credibility that you're willing to post, that you don't try and pull the one or two out of 300 that are not, that bug me every time I read them. But
Well, you're always going to get somebody. If you got 300 reviews, somebody's not going to like what you do. So,
we try and be really consistent though, and like the thing is that if I could tell borrower, like I wish borrowers knew, like the majority, when loan officers talk, and they do, we don't talk like, oh, we made so much money or whatever. We literally, we talk about the wins, and a lot of times the wins are not the loans we're the happiest about. We're not the ones you make the most money on, but it's the one where there's, we're all working together. The family's story just means something, and we're just really grateful to be a part of it. And I think if people heard those conversations that we have amongst ourselves about how happy we are to be able to put a period on a great, or to be a part of their story, I think that it would help the industry. It would certainly help people. It's not that people don't like salespeople. It's just that people don't like bad salespeople.
It's true. Well, they get a lot of press, the bad salespeople.
Well, so it's interesting. So I have a son. He's 25. When he was in high school, we had to get him. We had to get some shoes. It was like dress shoes for something. I don't quite remember. He was about 16, and we went to the mall, and the department store where I had a coupon. And I won't mention their name, but they always have. They always have the one shoe on the floor, and then you have to go to the other one back. And the register broke down, and so the only place that he could have bought these shoes was in the women's lingerie. Now we're in the social media era, and so my son was not going to risk buying shoes at a register in the women's lingerie area. It's just so we just let's just go to. We went to Nordstrom's,
Right.
and the whole it was a great experience. They talked me into buying another pair of shoes for him because the salesperson was just so good and really got it. So we're driving home and talking about something else, and something about sales came up. He said, "Oh, I'd never want to do that," and I'm like, well, and so I equated to him like, okay, what was it like at Macy's? Oh, it was awful. The delays and all that stuff. What was it like at Nordstrom's? It was like great. I said, when you're in the hands of a person that listens, but knows what you want and gives you options, but does not give you the Cheesecake Factory of options, but gives you like a few options because they really listen to you, it's a great experience. Like the most frustrating thing is when we get calls is like, I want to know all your options. Well, okay, you've got a 620 FICO. You need help with down payment. Like I have an option for you, but you're not going to have 10,000 different options, nor should you want. It's going to work this way, and people get, it's just that they're like, this isn't the Cheesecake Factory. This is like, hey, we're this. Think of this as, this is artisanal.
True.
Whoever thought you could take like a 620 FHA loan and brand it artisanal? I'll have to remember that after this podcast is done.
Artisanal loaning. Okay. Well, so what's your prediction, or what's the current market like these days?
It's this. I've had a good year to date, but the last month has been slow in originations, and deals have been harder to get accepted. And I
Oh,
think it's just that we have the whole tariff tease thing going on, and then the Fed would like to cut interest rates, but they really can't because this tariff thing is you know okay, companies have sold. What happens when is the price going to be passed on to the consumer? How much? It's sort of back and forth. It's a little exhausting. And then also, like, anytime we get some equilibrium, now we have the Iranian Israeli conflict. Is that going to affect oil? And if gas goes up, is that going to be inflationary? And there's just and then just so many mortgage companies. The effective technology with mortgage companies, like in 2021, I think we had over 500,000 loan officers, and now it's like close to 75,000. And so mortgage companies are having
wait. Say those numbers again.
over 400,000, I think almost 500,000 loan officers in 2021, and now
Wow.
that's under 75.
Whoa. That's like a huge, wow, like 1/5 the number.
Right. And part of it is, and the thing is that you have a real stratification. So in San Diego, during most of my time here, the top 15% did about 78% of the volume.
Right. Okay. The 80/20 rule. Yeah.
Now it's the top 10% are doing 90% of the production.
Oh, wow.
Now, but what the mortgage industry has been waiting for is like we have a situation of margin compression where rates are, because of rates, the cost of originating a loan becomes higher, but we haven't gotten the promised price reduction with AI and in terms of that. So
Oh,
you have a lot of companies that are kind of holding on. Um, they're trying to hold on until we can either see technology kind of make us more productive, or we get the long promised refi boom, and that just holds off the inevitable market correction. But the implications of that is the loan officers that are left are going to be, for the most part, like more established people. And so there's really, the sad thing about it is first time home buyers are younger, but they're not meeting loan officers that are their own age. They're
uh,
mostly old grizzled people, and because there isn't, we haven't. To it's hard to develop young talent, and I've had this. The reason is that since the development of the CFPB, mortgage
that
origin
acronym, what's the
the,
CFPB?
Consumer Finance Protection Board.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Now loan officers are nationally licensed and their production becomes public. What that makes it hard for is, say Catfish Funding, has some young loan officers that they're trying to build into, and maybe they strike lightning, and this, young, loan officer becomes really good. Now, Catfish Funding doesn't get credit for developing this young loan officer and stuff. He now has to. They now have to. They're now. Company A will come in and want to recruit and pay a big bonus to this loan officer, and basically, so why do you want to risk developing somebody if it's going to be hard for you to keep those people because the numbers all production? And most loan officers do not understand the ecosystem in which their loans live in. So they it's sort of like the blind person describing an elephant.
Right.
So in where this really happens, I was having a conversation with someone, and we were talking about servicing. Now, servicing is a big issue with the mortgage business because portfolio retention. We have 3 years of mortgage rates over 6.5 to 7%. Eventually those are going to refinance, and you don't want to lose them off your books if you're a servicer. Now, a lot of the top mortgage companies sold off servicing in order to try and keep things up. New American Funding retains most of its servicing.
Okay.
Now, UWM, which is the largest lender, but they're also mostly third-party origination. People broker to them. A few years ago, they wanted their people to basically sign a non-compete that if you're with the UWM Cavalcade of Stars, you won't be selling to Rocket.
Yeah.
So UWM has been selling a lot of their loans to Mr. Cooper. Well, much was made a big deal about Rocket buying Redfin, but really the acquisition that happened in the last year was Rocket buying Mr. Cooper,
Oh,
because now, so if rates drop, the loan officer, with UWM, their loans are being serviced by Mr. Cooper. Now, Rocket's portfolio team, which is very good, is going to be basically um,
have all.
in charge of maintaining the portfolio, and it creates it's going to make it harder for loan officers to go that sold to Mr. Cooper, to keep their loans. I've had to compete with aggregators on loans that I originated with happy clients, and that's going to be very interesting. Now, fortunately, the company that I work for, we do a lot of servicing, and I'm able to kind of I'm able to earmark loans so that we service them, and the company does a tremendous amount and a great job at helping us retain our contact with our past clients. They do that on our behalf, and I think that that's something that mortgage. I was talking about this on LinkedIn today. That companies need to really pay attention to it, and loan officers that might be thinking about making a move need to ask those questions about what is their company going to do to help retain their pipeline.
So what's happening to defaults right now? Are they going up or down?
They're going up, but because of inventory, you're not seeing a lot of stuff go to short sale, or they're not going that far. You might see people, and companies are doing more. I'm seeing more modifications when it makes sense. I had one client this past weekend ask me about a short sale, but most most loans, I've done one short sale in the last 9 years. Most of them, by the time if something gets in distress, they don't make it to foreclosure because it'll sell pretty quickly because of lack of inventory,
Right.
or uh, it's just that the companies will also do reworks when they can.
Right. Right. They'll figure out a way to get around the
They'll just do a modification where it happens. You're not, people keep thinking, oh, that the problem, like with history, and I'm saying this as a history teacher, is that you tend to fight the future war with what you learned in the past. So,
yeah. Okay.
so the thing is that if we're we won the Gulf. The Gulf War was won on certain principles, but now we don't. With cyber, with the advent of computers, you don't necessarily need to even put troops on the ground. You can screw up a country with drones, and just by getting their infrastructure, their block cyber warfare, which doesn't kill bodies, it just keeps people from downloading Netflix. But but
okay, let's go. Let's talk a minute.
so in mortgages, people think like
that's
that.
what I wanted to go to. Yeah,
People
what's
think
happening with AI in mortgages?
Well, what happens with mortgages is people will say, "Oh, prices are going to go down." If we were going to see a big meltdown of prices, it would have happened in 2020 when COVID hit, and you had so many people going out. But with everyone, you didn't see that happen. You saw people keep their homes because lenders were encouraged to do modifications and forbearances, and it worked out okay. Now, AI is going to be interesting because it should make originating a loan cheaper,
Right.
but it's also, I think, it's going to mean that fewer loan officers. And it's not that you'll see every loan underwritten by AI, but what you'll see is that the 30% where it's like a ton of equity, great credit, everything can be verified. Those aren't going to be, those aren't going to take a long time to do, and loan officers will do those quickly, and then spend more time on the bank statement loans or the loans that require a little bit more finesse and wherewithal and even
Right.
imagination.
Right. Well, let's leave it there. It sounds like we could probably talk for another 3 hours about the whole world of mortgages and loans and AI and what's going to happen in the future. But for now, we'll come back in maybe 3 to 6 months and address this whole thing again. See how the tariffs are hopefully panning out.
I would love that.
Yeah, nobody knows right now. So,
Nope.
and maybe probably not in 3 to 6 months. We'll see. But anyway, Stephen, it was great to speak with you. I look forward to speaking to you again in the future. Where can people get a hold of you?
My email is stephen.moye@nafinc.com. I'm on LinkedIn, it's Stephen Moye. I'm on Twitter at Stephen Moye. You probably find me there, and I'm always up for a chat.
All right. Well, let's see what happens here. If you need to talk about lending or a mortgage, call Stephen right away.
Thank you so much.
Talk to you soon.
That's a wrap on today's journey through the SF commercial real estate scene. Ready to share your story? Visit sfcommercialconversations.com/guest. Your insights could lead the next conversation.